That was quick.
No, I just got a different impression from Marie. Were we at the same meeting?
She said they declined Taliaferro because
Who was this guy? Is he from?
Stranger. Stranger in our midst.
this guy.
See how long I can stick around. Every time I commit to something, I end up in the hospital.
Don't say it out loud.
Knock on
Yeah.
synthetic wood.
Okay.
Fresh haircut, you're all set to go.
It was a requirement. My father-in-law was coming up, so my wife said if you wanted to join us for Christmas.
But the stash doesn't get trimmed, huh?
No. That's my property.
So, Matt Moran sent a message today. First of all, we're opening at 8:05, Chairman. Good
Yes.
to go? I need to get paper to take minutes. So, Butterfield, Paul Galera was traveling. Ray, the architect, is not available tonight. The engineer is traveling, and Matt is home alone with his kids this week, so nobody could be here tonight. But we can talk through. Several people have watched the PCNR recording of the planning board meeting at which they discussed these, and they've got lots of good notes on them, so we can at least get a basic idea of
Well, I
response.
watched the video of the planning board meeting twice, because sometimes, you miss a word here or there.
Well, it's also hard because it's at a distance from the speaker.
Yeah, that's true. And I didn't know who the gentleman was who was sitting at the end of the table
He is
next to Chuck Voss.
he is an engineer with B&L.
And he's with BNL, he is not an engineer for Butterfield.
He's an engineer for B&L.
Okay, and then the
That's
gentleman.
consultant to planning board, right?
Consultant to the planning board, and he's looking at the relocations and other stuff. I'll tell you about that in a second. That's old. He's looking at the infrastructure issues around that. He didn't actually say that much, so.
Well, actually, I thought he said quite a lot.
What? He didn't. Yeah, he didn't talk. You didn't talk about the. Well, anyway, keep going. Before you do that, though, these are old ones that accidentally got all of our copies got delivered to Mike Gingulis by mistake.
Okay.
I
So-
figured there wasn't enough meetings that I should catch up, so.
But they got replaced. I think that they got replaced in later version later. We just need to make sure it goes to file.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
And do we, is there a copy of that for everybody? Is there one?
It was left for you here. You didn't pick it up.
No.
Well, I'm gonna have to share because I don't have a key to Mary.
You're
unless Ralph
LEAs.
is here, or maybe Michael
Sure.
has a. Do you have a key? You don't have a key to Mary's room, do you?
I don't, not on me.
Is Ralph? Oh, Ralph's not here. Is he?
Bruce is
All
here.
right.
Bruce is here.
Because I got the S.
Let me see if I can get a copy.
yeah, you got the
I-
memo with the
Kathleen,
PDFs,
yeah.
right?
Kathleen, don't worry about that. Business.
Yeah, I got it on my computer if you want to use the computer, I just.
Well, no, I've got them here. Because I printed.
You printed
Kathleen?
out, you printed out the PDFs and everything?
You got him?
Don't,
Bruce has.
well, I got the
printed-
ones,
I printed out all the PDFs,
yeah.
but she's got the big copies as well.
a key. You want to look or not look?
Do you wanna
Don't worry
sit
about
down,
it.
Mike?
Don't worry
Because you're
about
the
it.
liaison.
For a few minutes.
There's
Never mind, Bruce. We're good. Thank you. Do you want to sit? Here, sit here.
It's all right. Okay.
basically they went through the two building locations
Right.
and looked at a variety of shifts that they could make and gave sort of pros and cons about each shift. And they did include, we'd asked them to include the boundary of the land lease
Mm-hmm.
for the Leahy Pavilion, so that's the bold, the heavy bold line
Right.
that goes sort of across the parking lot
Yeah.
in front of Leahy, which is helpful, because you can see how close it, how far down that slope it really comes.
Yeah.
So they laid them out in options and then presented that last option was the preferred option. So A, B, C, and then D is the preferred. And on building 1, X, Y, and Z is the preferred. Wait a minute.
Yeah, Z is
Here's
the preferred.
Here's a
building
large
one.
copy. Here's a large copy. They were here.
I can see well enough in the small copies, 'cause I can read them.
Okay, well, yeah, I've got extras. Do you want one?
Killing trees here.
You're welcome to be at the table with
That's
that.
what I do in the office.
Killing
Bring me
trees.
3 sets.
The planning board, as you saw in the recording, tended to agree with the applicant's assessment of the optimum options. And for example, on building 2, what the planning board really liked was that shifting the structure back so that it was roughly parallel with the parking lot and turned slightly,
Yeah.
sort of more parallel to the curved portion of the road. The challenge is that it's a really deep slope, it's a really steep slope. And they can only shift so far back on the slope and until they bump up against the boundaries of a land lease. But what the planning board liked about option D for building 2 was that it created a larger space for patio, for public space in front of the building. There was some concern, as I recall, among members that it felt odd to have, with the shift, to now have the building not be parallel with the drive entrance, the entrance along
Perpendicular.
perpendicular to that drive, but I think for all of the things that we were talking about in terms of streetscape and relating the buildings to Leahy, in my mind, that's a minor consideration because it's off the public right of way.
Yeah, now Matt Moran also was concerned that building 2, if it were parallel to Leahy, would not look as much a part of the overall Butterfield development. And Karn mentioned that it might not shield the view of the Leahy Pavilion, and she and Ann both expressed some concern that, you know, they'd like to see the Leahy Pavilion shielded more because it's a less attractive building.
Yeah, I can't.
But they also said that, you know, the twist of it also allowed for additional landscaping to be put in,
Yeah.
which would then shield the Leahy Pavilion somewhat from view.
My
there
impression
was-
is that they felt that was a decent trade-off.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
To gain that public space in the front. I mean,
Mhm.
look, the reality is, because of the slope and the location of Leahy and its size, you're never ever gonna shield it, and I don't think that's what we're trying to accomplish either. It's that we're trying to look at the overall site and the overall development as a cohesive unit, and rather than sort of pretend it doesn't exist, find a way to incorporate the building that remains into the new construction.
Well,
Is that
quite frankly,
accurate?
Building 2 is going to be a like 2.5-story building, so there will be less view of Leahy in any case, because it's obviously, it's not viewed from one point, it's viewed from multiple points along the continuum of 9D. And,
Have you seen the elevations?
secondly, the size of the patio or the configuration of the patio would shift somewhat, which might be nice, I don't know. But I think our basic objective was to push it back from the DOT right-of-way more, to make it more consistent with, buildings such as the Nest and M&T, which are set back further and have that more green space as it funnels down to, 9D north of Oak Street.
And the thing is that I think that the point that Ann's missing and Karen is the fact that Leahy Pavilion is up, and it is at quite a height above the street level. I don't care where you put this building, it's really not gonna do very much to shield, to block the view.
Nothing's going to shield it, nothing's going to shield it, which is why you then look to, how do we incorporate it,
That's right.
so that it
How
doesn't
do you
look.
make it part of the overall, you know?
Yeah, and so that it doesn't look like it's something you're building around, but something that
Right.
you're building with.
I think the consensus of the planning board members was that option D, I think the primary concern was that it completely complied with the section 134.4, or whatever it is, of B4A zoning, and, you know, the footnote there, and that it, you know, it didn't go beyond that, even though that footnote is unfortunate, and the fact that it just takes numbers just out of thin air, because anybody putting retail space, and this has nothing to do with HDRB or the planning board, since it's not a concern of either, but my concern from my background in real estate development is that if you've got retail space on the ground floor of building 2, and it's mostly visible from southbound traffic on 9D, it's almost invisible from northbound traffic on 9D, and it's just less marketable. But that's outside of our purview, but it bothers me nonetheless.
Well, remember that now, this is now, I believe, trustee Bowman, that this is now being considered as the municipal building and not the retail building anymore.
No, it's still retail on the ground floor.
Retail on the ground
Yeah.
floor, but
Yeah.
municipal above, correct?
Don't quote me on it.
Both, both 1 and 2
That
are
was my
retail
recollection
ground
from the
floor
conversation.
and offices or senior center, whatever above. So it's retail ground floor, office, or other uses above.
Okay, so then, are we all pretty much in agreement that we agree with option D?
Does anybody have any comment on the other options?
I think option D does work for building number 2, and I think it actually works as well as it can, given the
Site
legislation that we have to work with.
And that was the one that the builder liked too, was D as well?
Yeah.
Yeah,
D was the applicant's preferred option.
Yeah, the applicants and their consultants, and the planning board's consultants all seem to agree with that, as well as the planning board did.
I just don't see how, given that land lease boundary, I don't know how you could go back any further anyway. It's right up against the land lease.
I'm simply amazed that the first time the land lease boundaries came up, even though they were asked about it previously, the very first site visit we had, I remember asking Tim Miller about that, and he said, it's a land lease, you know, like, that didn't matter, but it does matter. And the first time it was brought up was when we had our first joint meeting with the planning board,
When you
which
ask for it.
which is crazy. I just don't get it. Okay, let's go to building 1 now. Oh, the other comments on building 2 had to do with parking. They would lose something like, yeah, they would
Well-
lose 3.8 spaces or 4.4
But it gets
spaces,
gained
but
over here.
but Chuck noted that there was actually a possibility of actually regaining at least a couple of those spaces
At the end of the
at,
parking lot.
at the end of the parking lot. And then on building 1, there was actually an increase of about 4 or 5 spaces, so that, you know, overall, the number remained fairly neutral
Now, when he
from the
wrote,
planning board's
for D, when
perspective.
they wrote less visible on approach site, I took that as if building 2 was less visible on the approach site, not the pavilion like you were talking about before.
Correct.
That made it all clear. Because I don't think you're gonna I don't think you're gonna hide it like you said, so.
So, I'm sorry that I forgot to bring it up, print it out and bring it with me. So Mike, in our last design session with Michael, in our last design session with Butterfield, the building inspector, given the height requirements of the B4A, the building inspector had looked at some of the initial designs from Butterfield for building 1 and determined that the heights wouldn't work, and so asked them to bring the height down on the building. So in order to retain floor area and bring down the height, they modified the form of building 1
The footprint,
the footprint.
yeah.
So that it has a couple of jogs to allow more space with, and still bring down the height as the zone requires. So if the building is now more irregular than it was previously, the planning board seemed to respond positively to the greater degree of animation that the building would have with that shape. I think that we are still, based on our last conversation with them, we asked them to look a bit more at the design for building 1. We were unresolved about things in the last round, so the architect has been, it must be said, incredibly responsive to comment. Is going to be bringing in new designs potentially tomorrow, if not tomorrow, then next week. So we don't know exactly what the footprint of this is going to be, but based on his last set of drawings, they did the space study, the siting study. So this one probably isn't final, but it's close.
That's correct. Now, the other thing that the engineer sitting next to Chuck Voss mentioned was they had not gotten to a final reading from DOT about certain traffic issues, or certain roadway issues. And given the line of the DOT right-of-way, which is in the option Z
Which is the
site
preferred.
plan, is 2 feet away, part of the building is 2 feet away from the DOT right-of-way line. If DOT requires turning lanes coming out of either of those driveways into the property, that could it's not our issue, it's the planning board issue, but that could mess up where the sidewalk goes.
Correct. What the planning board preferred, and the applicant prefers option Z. The planning board in particular, Anne and Karn, and I believe James Pergamo expressed this as well. They liked the additional plaza space that the reconfigured and resited building 1 would accommodate.
And that the loading area became irrelevant.
Yeah, that's the last iteration of it.
And that the loading area became irrelevant for some reason.
Because the post office isn't going to be in that building.
That's right. Okay.
Well, no. Not that the post office, I'm sorry. Not that the post office isn't going to be in that building. That the post office is not going to be a distribution center.
Yeah, it's
That's
only
maybe
going to be a
it's not the
retail.
right language, but it's only going to be a retail
retail,
counter.
right.
So they don't have to have the same loading dock area, since that
Yeah,
won't be
that's right,
yours.
they're not going to have trucks coming in, right?
Why can't the plaza be incorporated into option 1?
I don't know.
So you
No,
have
option 1,
farther setback from the road, and then you would still have the plaza portion there.
As an X, Mike?
Option 1.
What do you mean further setback? That one's 15 feet and the other is 22,
Well, 25,
right?
I mean, if the,
Oh, they're measuring from different lines. Sorry, keep going.
doesn't matter.
and you're talking about
No,
option X?
You know, I was talking about option 1.
Why? Why with the 15-foot
option Y.
setback? So I think 25 would probably kind
That
of
had,
defeat the purpose of
that had a
blocking
big
lane.
problem with the parking. They lost a lot of parking
Why did?
in Y, yeah.
8 spaces.
Yeah, on
Minus
the hill.
7 plus
I don't
3.
understand what you're saying. Do you mind saying it again? Can you
Minus
point
4.
into it?
So minus 11.
No, in option Z, you have the plaza that kind of fills in that
Yep.
bay over there. On option Y, since you have that setback that's farther, you could fill that in with
Here?
kind of a plaza on that side as well, if that was
Here, you mean?
even around into where the parking is.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't do that. It's a
But if
good
that was
question
one
to
of
ask.
one of the appealing things of
Right.
Z, that might be something that,
Yeah, no, is that, now let's follow up with Carolyn's comment. Is that the one that loses, 8 parking spaces lost in this one? That was the issue, that for why
Y.
they preferred not to use Y, yeah. Without removing the loading dock drop-off area, it will be 12 spaces. And under Z, it's an additional parking space created by reconfiguring the
oh yeah,
spaces.
it's all lost on the,
Top side, right?
no.
Yeah, and
to the
they
left of the
they were,
building
To the
they're-
left, yeah.
and they have a concern about the number of spaces overall in the project.
That's fair.
What's hard about these is that we don't have. Hang on a second, let me look at it again before I
Z
say
is
that.
only 2 feet from the right of way, but it's 22 feet from the curb. So it's
That's
not
right,
like
but if you suddenly had to have
a parking lane, or
or
a
a
Turn
turn lane
yeah.
there, that would be reduced even further. Well, the 2 feet wouldn't be reduced, but the 22 feet would be reduced. And the sidewalk would have to be relocated, which would be kind of
See,
odd.
I see that less as, if this drawing equates to this plaza indicated here, it's not so much a plaza as it is a wide entrance area or entryway around the building. I
Well,
don't,
except that what happens is that to the southerly end of that building, to the right side,
Mhm.
that's where the plaza gets increased. Which would not
yeah,
have
but I
been
mean, to
there.
consider what's here as plaza, I think is smoke and mirrors, actually. This, cause it's not, it's like a porte cochere, it's not,
Yeah, okay, so it's a porte cochere, which is fine.
so it's not
To call it
Public
a plaza,
spacey.
to call it a plaza is the wrong term. That's all it means.
But is that a depiction of option Z, or is that a depiction
Well,
of just the
I
building in
think
general?
that's the building in general, but I think that what you'll end up with as plaza in front is
Mhm.
probably not so far from this. Where it gets bigger is over here.
Go to more of a point to the southern side.
Yeah.
I mean, just going through each of them, option X, to have a driveway in front of a road, I think that, you know, it's just too much of a concession to automobiles, and so the only other one that's realistically viable, I would think is option Y. And there, I guess, you know, they're dealing with the loss of 8 parking spaces.
Can you say what you said again about X and being a concession to
Well,
the car?
X has this driveway right in front of it, right in front of the building. And I think that what we're trying to do is get some, you know, buildings which are a little bit more pedestrian friendly. I mean, it's one of the advantages of having this patio, and you know, people could be walking down the street and walk to this building. You know, to me, the driveway just sort of isolates, particularly with this, you know, grassy area. I mean, it's like a moat around this building,
Yeah, it's like a road next to a road,
right?
you know.
That setback is gonna open up Leahy to the view coming into the village too. So.
Yeah, the, you know, if you look at the comprehensive plan, it really does not, support the idea of having, you know, that roadway next to a roadway or a parking area there, you know, which, you know, I mean, we probably only would have gone in that direction if there was no other possible viable alternative.
Could you say what you just said about the setback? What your thought was on the setback?
On option X,
Mm-hmm.
that's 25 feet off of the DOT right of way,
Mhm.
which add another what to the curb? Another
Mhm,
10
mhm.
feet, so you're talking 35 to 40 feet off of the curb. You're gonna see Leahy coming around that turn. Rather than if it was closer to the road, it would block more of the Leahy Pavilion behind. But like Al said, Leahy being up on the hill, you're gonna see it no matter what.
You're gonna see it no matter what, and option Z is 22 feet, it's not that much different.
Well,
But you're gonna have visual distraction with Z, right? If you're gonna have visual interest with a plaza.
But isn't that 22 feet to the curb, and this one, X is
22 feet to the
25 feet
pavement, right.
to that access road?
Right.
So it's probably about 30-something feet, 40 feet to the
Okay.
curb.
yeah.
It was shifted way back.
Well, why does it have to be, pardon my ignorance, I'm trying to imagine the traffic flow. Why does that need to be a driveway?
It's
On
an
the
access
front.
road, I don't know why it is either.
Is there,
And they say 18 parking spaces lost.
8,
Yeah, because you lose all of the parking behind the building.
Behind it, right, yeah. No, X,
And all of the parking.
X and Y have
both lots.
serious negatives,
Yeah.
right.
well, why couldn't I don't know what, I can't imagine right now what turning radiuses would have to be. But one of the things we talked about was moving parking to the front so the building could sit back farther,
Right.
in keeping with the plazas on the other side of 9D. What, could you accommodate parking spaces along the front?
Wouldn't that be more of a, I don't know if that's in our purview, but wouldn't that be more of a pain in the neck to get in and out of Route 90 if you're pulling in like that,
It
you're
would
backing
be,
up?
it would be.
Well, I
It
think
would,
that's,
it would be, I think there'd be a lot more vehicular conflicts, which is a planning board issue, not ours.
Yeah.
But also, I think that, if we're looking for, precedent, I think we should be looking more at the Nest and at M&T, which don't
Parking
have
to
parking
the
in front of
side,
them, they have
yeah.
parking to the side, where obviously the Drug World Plaza, the Food Town Plaza, the other gas station stuff, they have parking in front, they're more, but they're also
They're pushed
all,
back for it.
they're also all, they're not only historic district, they're also pre-zoning in some cases.
When they were
So-
gonna do, the 90 baseball field, across from the football field,
Mhm.
where Haldane owns that, they were gonna do that, and the DOT said they were gonna put an island in there. You had to have one way in and one way out, so people couldn't back out into 90.
They wanted to do that for Chestnut Street, or 55 Chestnut, the wine shop and all that. You know. They
So I
wanted to
say,
put
so
it in.
if they did that, I would assume that if you had the parking on the outside, they'd make it like an island, which would make it harder to get in and out now.
Mhm.
If you wanted to turn in, I think they would definitely probably mandate a turning lane now, because if you're waiting to get into that one way to get in, one way to get out, and you can have a curb going along the side.
so maybe that's why the access road is there.
I know when we looked at this site as a possibility for the firehouse, that the DOT told us the turn radius there coming around was too sharp to have parking directly on the street like that, or even to pull a truck in and out of.
And
For
basically where
regular
they,
cars as well.
If you were just gonna have an open lot with no island or anything like that.
basically where you have the two driveways now are pretty close to where the driveways are
Yeah.
right now. And, you know, rather than ask DOT, like, can we have another curb cut? This is the easier way to go.
So what was the reason for asking them to move building one?
To
Too close
keep,
to the road, or?
to try to keep the setbacks that exist in that area of the village, which are deeper.
And I mean, my thought would be is that a deeper setback's necessarily a positive.
I think in this portion they are. Because one of the characteristics out there is in that portion of the village is open. That the setbacks are deeper and the vista is more open as you come around the corner.
You know, Chestnut Ridge on one side is set back pretty far from the road, and then the Nest and M&T are set,
M&T.
yeah, they're set back pretty far from the road, and then you have that big green space that will remain, which will be the public park, the easement park, or whatever you wanna
Yeah.
call it.
Gateway.
And, yeah, the sledding hill, you know, to maintain that sort of open green character that the,
Which the plaza would do, if that were to happen.
yeah.
But also to try to
And-
mitigate the impact of the height.
But I just think that Z is the better option, only because it, I know it doesn't have a setback to push all the way back, but it gets rid of that stupid access road, and it doesn't allow the parking up front of it, which I don't think it should be. So now you'd have the sidewalk coming down, I know the building would be right there, but like Al said, you can walk right into the building now without walking through a parking lot.
Yeah, it's not a perfect solution,
Well, it's a compromise.
it's a compromise, it's not a perfect solution, it's a compromise, but I think, you know, unless there's a great deal of change in this plan, in this design, that I think, and I think that's something that we should flag to the planning board, that as long as that footprint remains the same, that,
Which it may not do.
which it may not, but it might, option Z would be acceptable, but if that footprint changes, that we'd like to revisit the issue.
Well, I don't think that if there are changes in the footprint, I don't think they're gonna be huge at this point.
Well,
I
no,
mean, my impression from the last conversation we had with Matt and the architect was that we were focusing more on materials,
Yeah,
that although we were less happy about the flat roof having gone away, we felt that they had incorporated these brick.
Clapboard, there's too much clapboard on that second.
Yeah, we were talking more about, we were pleased about the incorporation of this, which tied them back to building 2, but had concerns about how much clapboard, could we look at more brick, and I know that I personally felt like this looked sort of hotel-y and this looked sort of hotel-y, and he was gonna, so that this incorporated elements of building 2.
I don't think it has anything hotel-y about it. I think the issue that you had mostly was with the clapboard.
It was mostly the clapboard, but also this portico.
Isn't that gonna get bigger now
But
with
I
option
think,
Z?
I think a portico,
what did you ask?
I think
Isn't
a
that gonna
portico
get
is
bigger now
actually
with
a
option Z with the patio getting bigger?
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
Is that gonna get bigger with the plaza getting bigger?
Oh, that we don't know yet.
Porch,
We won't know that till he comes back
But
with the new design.
I think that porch area is actually kind of a user-friendly building feature. Because there may be, we don't know what type of tenants will be in this building in the long run. And, in terms of, if it's medical offices or something like that, and somebody's waiting for a cab, somebody, is being dropped off, picked up, etc., you might wanna have a space outdoors where you can wait and not be rained on or snowed on or have the sun beating down on you or something like that.
I think it will make a big difference with the materials shift. I think when the materials are shifted, the appearance of the building will be very different.
Yeah,
And that
okay, but
that portico may.
The materials are not for this meeting, the point of this meeting is to talk about the siding.
No, right,
talk
but
about the placement of
responding to your
buildings on the
point,
side,
I don't think we decided anything with him about that.
No, we didn't.
Except to Michael's question was, would this be expanded with this new layout? And the answer is we don't know yet.
Yeah, would it be wrapped around the corner of the building or something like that? If it were this design, I find that kind of hard to imagine, but I don't know.
Yeah.
You never know.
See, this is what he started with.
Yes.
See how small, it was basically a little
I'd
canopy
forgotten
right
that,
up
yeah.
Mhm.
the entrance.
And depending upon the type of retail tenants he may have there, that might be preferable.
Well,
You know, for-
and the
for
other
the
thing that we were
visibility of
talking about
storefronts.
when we were looking at this is that right now, it sort of indicates an entrance from the street side, but, another possibility could be that you have the entrance off of the side of the building.
The plaza.
Well, the driveway side, as opposed to
The
here.
south end.
Yeah, the plaza, the
Plaza.
triangular plaza at the south end.
Right, in other words, the entrance is over here rather than here.
Well, but there
That
also
could
may
happen.
be multiple entrances if there may
Right.
be, who knows what's gonna happen
Well,
on the upper floor.
if it's
Well,
retail, then
individual
each,
stores, you have individual entrances,
Right.
yeah.
Well, so what do we wanna take tomorrow to the planning board?
I think we generally have a consensus on building 2 for option D, do we not?
yes, we do.
Well,
Yeah,
let's hear from
that-
Michael.
Yeah. That was the first one we did, right?
And option Z, I think
Yeah. I like the option Z for the other one.
I like the direction that option Z is going in, but, if that building footprint changes, I'd like to revisit it. Building 2 seems to be, the more urgent to get approval on.
Well, I don't know that it's more urgent, it's more complex. because of the bioretention area. There were two things. The infrastructure required for the bioretention area, two things. One, and two, Arnie raised the question whether the planners, the applicant's planners and the village's planners had looked at chapter 111 in the village code, which is the subdivision ordinance, and which has very specific language about roadways and the classification of roadways and their entrance with state roads, A, and B, the applicant's planner raised the issue, was it the applicant's planner or the B&L planner? I think it was the applicant's planner, raised the issue of how site shifts would impact the slope on what they're calling Butterfield Road, on that side entrance. So this piece is still unresolved, and the continuing discussion about how that road gets engineered may shift things about the plaza over here. But we won't know more about that until tomorrow night, and maybe not even tomorrow night.
I think the questions they were raising about the road were further uphill.
That wasn't clear to me from the discussion. I imagine that you're right, given
Because
this how it gets so much
road,
steeper up higher.
This road exists right now. This
Well,
driveway
exists.
But
exists.
it's not
Exists
parking
to
on
here.
both, it's not on both sides, parking either. Parking's only on the one side right now.
Yeah, I know, but this part of it, the
Yeah.
part adjacent to where the building would be, actually exists right now. Okay?
It goes all the way up to the top, yeah.
It goes all the way up to, almost to the
Where the
top.
heavy
Well,
black
remember-
line is.
There's gonna be some really heavy engineering up here, because think about when you get out of your car at the top of this current parking lot, and if you walk up that slope to where the old emergency room was, or you walk back between the Leahy and the hospital building, it is serious slope back there.
Oh, yeah.
So the engineering that's gonna happen, the site engineering that's gonna have to happen to make this portion level is gonna have really big impacts on that road.
It's going to have, it's gonna be a lot of excavation.
It's gonna be a lot of excavation, yeah.
Well, with the underground retention pond, it's
What?
gonna be,
Where's the sensor button?
with the underground retention area, they're gonna be, because when they did the Grove, that was huge. I mean, it was unbelievable just for the Grove, for the underground retention. Unbelievable.
For the circle,
Yeah.
you mean?
Unbelievable. It took them days.
That's what that whole lot
weeks.
is to
Yeah.
between Butterfield and the Grove,
It's all
underground
big,
retention.
huge pipes, huge, gigantic. You drive a truck through
Well,
it.
there's 5 manholes that are clustered there at the Butterfield end of the
Yeah.
Grove property.
Because when they did that, Lions was there forever doing that, burying the pipes. So I think they could, I think that wouldn't be enough, to probably the dirt down below.
I still think there's gonna be a lot of blasting, but, so for tomorrow night, it sounds like what we're saying is that in concept, we support option D for building 2 and option Z for building 1. With the caveat that the design of this building is still uncertain, and shifts in it may impact
Yeah,
the
particularly
location, the
with
alignment.
respect to building 1, yeah.
It looks like you've got other thoughts.
Well, I'm just looking at option X, and I'm trying to find 18 spots that are parking spaces that would lost.
Right up here.
10,
On the top, right?
7,
Well, that's 11
and
spaces,
then over here is, there's,
and you're gaining a couple here.
Yeah, but you're cutting off these too, because you're realigning this piece of road, so you're cutting out those 7 there and 11 there.
Why
That's
did these
18.
have to be cut out?
because they're shifting the road up.
See, that green line is the new line. Not
Okay,
here.
but why
Okay.
can't they keep these parking spaces? Now, over here, you've only got this little strip of land, so you pull this down and you have, your road comes in over here and you have these parking spaces on that side.
Can you do that again?
But either way, you're losing at least 11.
Well, and not necessarily so. let's say you keep these parking spaces, right? So from here, you know, they have 18 feet for parking and then 22 foot for circulation. So from here to here, you can get 22. So now you keep this road, and you know, this is the only part where it starts getting problematic. But so you lose 1, 2, 3, well, 11 spaces across over here. But you gain 1, 2, 3, and I don't know why this. To me, this. What's the point of this driveway? I would make this land, or you know, put a paved area, or whether you know, plaza in front of it, or something like that. But you know, to have it. What's the point of this road here?
I feel like there was
At all?
discussion that I can't pull right now, but I thought there was discussion from the B&L engineer about the issue Michael raised about turning off a state road
I
into a
know.
parking
My
lot.
feeling.
That this was the concession to that. I mean, we can
Okay.
ask that question tomorrow night.
I mean, my feeling is that, you know, keep this as land, either a plaza, green area, something like that.
And that is your preference because it's a few feet deeper?
Well, and you know, this is 25 feet from here to, it's not even the right of way, it's to the other side of the driveway.
It had something to
And
do,
then there's
no,
another
it
5
had
feet.
something to do with the turning radius for fire vehicles.
It was a turning radius issue, but I can't remember exactly
It was
what
for
it may
fire,
have
it
been
was
fire
fire
vehicles.
vehicles, it was
So
fire
why does that
vehicles.
go away under option Y?
If it's up here where it says NG, up in here, if it's circled, if it's tight up there, it opens up drastically by shifting it towards 9D.
All right, but
What
the
opens
thing
it
is,
up?
the thing is that right now, this building is jammed 25 feet, 30 feet from the right of way. So it's 30 feet from the right of way, and how far back is the right of way from the sidewalk? Well, maybe another 10 feet? So we're talking about
About 20 feet.
20 feet. Well, no, I mean, if this is 25 feet here, then from the right of way to the sidewalk is probably about another 10.
Not to the sidewalk, to the pavement, to the pavement of 9D.
Yeah, I'm talking about, you know, because I think conceptually what we're trying to, what we're dealing with is really from the sidewalk. You know, that's what,
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
that's
right.
what you'll
Yeah,
see
yeah,
when
yeah.
you're walking around. So you've got 10 feet here, 5 feet here, so we're talking about the building's 40 feet back. It doesn't need to be that far back for what we're trying to accomplish. If the building is pulled forward a little bit, the parking over here stays the same, parking up here stays the same, and you may be able to get some parking on this side.
So it sounds like what you're suggesting is something between X and Z?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Now,
Because-
isn't that pretty much Y then? So it's 15 feet, or is that? It's 15 feet from the
plus
line.
another, that would be 25 feet from the sidewalk.
Yeah,
Give
so
or
it
take.
is shifting it, oh, you wanna that's shifting
Yeah.
it towards 9D a little bit, but not so far back
Right.
like X shows, but not as close to the road like Z shows.
Well, actually, the options X and Y show a different footprint of the building than option Z
Right.
does. So if you took the footprint that's shown in option Z
Mm-hmm.
and moved that back, how much? 10 feet?
Right now, yeah, it's 25 feet to the curb line.
25 feet to the pavement,
Right, and so I would imagine there's a 5-foot strip and then the sidewalks.
4. Yeah.
No, the sidewalks are usually, I think minimum size like 8 foot.
Wide?
Yeah.
No.
No?
That's huge.
Well, that's
No.
New York, sorry.
No, it's
about-
it's 4 feet.
It's 4 or
4
5
feet.
down there, I think
Okay,
wider.
all right,
than
so
that.
let's say the inside line of the sidewalk is 10 feet from the curb line, give or take, 9-10 feet.
Okay.
From here to here is probably about 10 feet. So if they're saying the building's 25 feet from the curb line, it's actually 15 feet from the sidewalk. And let's say that gets pushed back another
10?
10 feet.
That actually might work. That actually might work. Because you'd actually gain a few more spaces here.
Can you set it down while you're pointing, so I can see what you're pointing at?
Oh, if you push this back another 10 feet, you might gain a few more spaces here. And you might have your requisite clearance here for fire trucks or whatever the issue was. And you might not gain 6 here, you might have 4 here and gain 2 here, so it might be a wash.
And Al, in your re-envisioned or in your compromise option Z2, the plaza remains? Because there was really strong support for that new plaza on the planning board.
Oh yeah, there was, very much so.
I have no problem with the plaza. I think that.
But I mean, can it be accommodated in your?
Well, yeah. I mean, my feeling is that I don't see why it's even pulled back. I mean, why not take the plaza and only have like a 5-foot strip on either side of the sidewalk? Otherwise, it's plaza. I mean, you're trying to bleed out the pedestrian aspect as much to the sidewalk as possible.
And you could have additional greenery there.
Yeah. There are. This entire area could be a very pedestrian-friendly space.
I'm comfortable with either of those, Z or Z2, Skalinski.
Because the other thing is that this is going to be the first building that you see coming. Well, it's not going to be the first building, but as you're coming in, it's going to be the most visible public building.
Well,
It'll
the
be the
building
first
with
thing-
which the public has the most interaction.
It'll be the first you encounter, yeah.
Especially if the other building ends up being the municipal building and this building ends up being the commercial building.
More purely commercial, true. Yeah. That could work. That could work.
I still think that's option Y though, because I think they shifted it back to 15 feet. I'm fine with it either, I mean, I think that, because it's back 15 feet opposed to 25 feet.
How is what you're describing, Al,
Well-
different than what's represented in Y?
It's not. The only difference is really in the footprint of the building.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if you took the same
Because the options
footprint.
it gives you at the top and bottom.
Well, that and also, Ray had this configuration, and he's sort of working in a vacuum. My feeling is that I wouldn't have any problem if he loosened up the massing of it so that it filled up more of the space that cars are giving back to us, or deigning to allow us to build on. And so, I mean, it could, the shape could be a lot more irregular than what he's showing here. Because essentially, the overall building site is really this that he's dealing with. And so, he can have something which is maybe like this, and this steps back and comes forward.
And it jogs around a bit more,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, my feeling is that we should give him a little more flexibility as far as coming up with interesting shapes for this building, because I think it's going to be an important building on the site.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think any way to retain, and if possible, increase this plaza gives even if the building isn't back as far as it might have been, it gives the impression that it's back farther.
Right.
Gives the
Well,
impression of depth.
And the whole thing is that we're trying to make a transition. We're starting with a building that kind of looks a lot like Leahy, and it's got a little plaza in front of it, and it's got flat roofs, which matches what Leahy has.
It doesn't
then-
look a lot like Leahy, it looks a lot better than Leahy.
Agreed. But I mean, the massing of the building is, it relates more to Leahy, whereas this carries the commercial look around the corner, and it starts merging it with
The houses.
the housing
Mm-hmm.
that's back here.
I can see that.
Actually, what we talked about with this is not so much that there are elements of it that relate to Leahy with the banding, et cetera, but what we all felt when this was first presented was it's reminiscent of the 41 wing at the hospital with those strong
at that
bands and the
meeting.
roof line. What did you say?
I was at that meeting when they
Okay.
first presented these. Are you staying with the clapboard and the?
That was just presented for the first time last time. I don't
Yeah,
know if we
I
resolved
think,
that. You what?
I love it.
I think I think we can talk about it. We also talked about the possibility
That's a lot
of
better than
stucco.
that.
I agree.
well, and I think with this one, the only problem that we had, and I understand why I put it in, really are these pediments, the phony pediments. And there's really no reason for it.
At
But-
that meeting though,
Yeah.
Well,
originally
I
they were
think what he was
both
looking for
flat
was to,
roofs, weren't they?
I think what he was looking for was to kind of
Bring it together.
bring
with
them
this.
together, because this one has that sort of Tudor pediment thing
Right.
going on, and so to kind of make them not exactly match, but look like an ensemble.
And the original design for that building had kind of an oculus at some
Right.
point.
That's right. It may again.
It is a mix between hospital and
Hotel. It looks like a hospital.
Well, this one.
yeah.
Yeah.
That looks.
This was.
I'm glad you say that because so far I'm the only one who's felt that way.
But this
No,
one-
I mean with the
This one, not that one.
with the little
No, that it feels so
entryway and
telly.
stuff, I mean.
This one.
That one, to me, it's like Al. It takes this, almost then as it swings around, it's more like a house, and then it goes into the housing development.
I just don't want it to end up. I'm concerned that it not end up looking like a suburban plaza building. That it have the look and feel of a Cold Spring commercial building and not ye olde Plaza E.
I'm saying if you take these off, that's Butterfield right there.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what we looked at originally.
I mean, you can. I think there's one piece like that. It's out there. I see it out my window.
Well, remember the old building. The original building had those.
Yeah, on the side. Yeah. So I think he did a good job with that.
Well, actually, it didn't have that type of gable
Not that
at all.
type, but it had a raised, it had a Dutch
Yeah.
or a Flemish gable end. Yeah.
Would have been convenient if it was still open for me.
And you can just
So-
roll down
Walk
the
down a
street.
hill.
So can we say that we sort of agree with Z, if they could push it back a little bit further, and if it means twisting around the building?
See, but we have some thoughts that might
Yeah.
improve, okay? And we're all down with D, okay? Is there anything else we need to talk about with us tonight? While we're all together, we need to do some calendar work.
While we have gathered together. Well, first let's talk about West Point Foundry.
That's exactly what I was gonna talk about, go ahead.
I mean, my feeling is that let's have them come to the meeting on the 14th, because we have to schedule a public hearing. And realistically, from what we've seen, I don't see any reason why we can't go ahead and do that.
They dropped this off? So,
They get paid by the pound.
so we would need to determine on the 14th, would we be, I'm sorry, would you turn that off? Would we be able to determine readiness for public hearing? I mean, given what they saw, what they presented in the workshop, I don't know how much more we would ask for to be ready for a public hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was fairly comprehensive, and I mean, they're pretty far along.
So do we need them, I'm just thinking about them bringing their architects from New York. Do they need to come on the 14th?
No,
Or
no.
could we
I think-
schedule another night? We don't
No.
have anything on the 21st,
I think the only person who really needs to be there is Meg
on the 14th.
on the 14th, and so that we can schedule a public hearing that she would agree to.
Okay, so our options for public hearing are the 21st, the planning board has the big room, so we'd be in here. The 28th, we have a workshop with Butterfield. So we could do it on the night of the 28th.
And you don't wanna have a public hearing in this small room, that's ridiculous.
No, there's nowhere for the public, clearly, there's nowhere for the public to be.
I think the 28th, because realistically, I don't envision a long public hearing. I think that if we can get them to make a presentation and then, a relatively short presentation of what it is that they're proposing.
So right now, the only thing on the agenda for that night is Butterfield, but we'll shift Butterfield down and do the public hearing first.
I think so, because I think that we can schedule that and get it done very quickly.
Is there a drawing of what they're looking to do?
They're,
Just the big one?
no, there's a folder right here. They are
Oh,
stabilizing
I gave my copy
clock
to
tower
Matt. I gotta give it back.
on the bell tower on the administration building.
My copy of the drawings I gave to
Put it
Matt.
back up.
But are they doing any work to the interior of the building?
Only to the extent that they're strengthening the,
550,000.
only to the extent that they're strengthening where they're putting the cupola back.
But they've done extensive materials conservation research and are restoring.
Have you
Or
been in
using-
that building, Lynn?
I'd love to be in that building, I've never been in
I
there.
was in there last year. One of the Scenic Hudson employees had the door open and let me peek my head in.
What's left in there?
They saved everything that was in there.
So the finishes are still there?
Yeah,
The moldings are,
Wow.
plaster's all pretty much gone.
yeah.
Are the walls up?
If I remember when they
There's no staircase.
when they took it over, realistically, there's nothing much on it as far as finishes on the inside.
I remember the plan they had to make it in a kind of an enclosed exhibit space in the back and everything.
I think that's still part of the plan, but I think we're talking about many years off.
They thought that the bell from that cupola is the Haldane bell. Do you know
But-
anything, have you ever heard that?
I don't know, I have a book at home, I thought the Haldane bell came from
The old
the old
Haldane
Haldane
school.
school.
No, I thought it was from the old Methodist church. That's where Butterfield Library is.
I'm gonna pull my book out, cause I have it, but I
Well,
thought
no,
this,
where the Butterfield Library was the Dutch Reformed Church.
Or Dutch Reformed, yeah. That was the bell that went up to Haldane.
Haldane.
I think there's
So
a
we have
stamp on the Haldane bell if you look
I don't know, I
under
think,
the
Except it's
million
been
layers of
painted
paint.
so many.
It's been sandblasted.
I stripped it all the way down to the bottom, and I painted it recently.
Okay, so them on the 28th,
What
next
time
week,
is that one on the 28th?
Yeah. I think we have them come, Meg is the only one that really needs to come
On
in.
the
That's-
14th.
That's to be able to schedule a public hearing.
determination for readiness and scheduling. Okay, now tomorrow night, Matt Moran from Unicorn asked that we, after we finish with the planning board, if their architect has any revised drawings, that he be able to sit with us in workshop after the planning board session. They don't know if they're gonna be ready, but
Okay.
they'd like us to be willing to stay if he is ready.
That one's at 7:30, right?
Yeah.
Join at 7:30. The planning board starts at 7, and then we're asked to join at 7:30.
I'm amenable to that.
Okay. So,
Great.
reporting out on the, do we need to talk about SHPO?
No, I think that, there's really nothing much. We're waiting for the memo from
Julian?
SHPO.
What's
That's
with
what
Linda
they-
Mackey?
I did get a call from Bill Hurst, and he apologized. He didn't. He forgot that he was supposed to prepare the letter of agreement. But we can. I need to talk with him to see exactly when you can have that letter of agreement ready.
Okay,
But it sounds like, it shouldn't take very long to
okay.
So how did it go with the NYSERDA conference call the other day?
Can I see the Garden Street folder?
The which one?
Garden Street?
The issue is basically that Stephanie wanted to clarify to the other members of the board as far as who's doing what and how much we would need for what we're trying to do. So one of the things which is very clear is that basically the grant that we're getting from SHPO, we can do the code review and update. And so that's basically what we're shooting for. Right now, we're sort of up in the air as far as the design guidelines update because SHPO wants to talk to us about that. And so we don't know exactly what it is that they
Well, we don't know the
wanna talk to
scope,
us
we don't
about.
know how the scope, we don't know how the scope is gonna impact cost.
Right.
And so there is, because when the NYSERDA grant was written, the SHPO grant had not been applied for or received, money was put into that grant, a request was built into that grant to do our code update as well.
Right.
So what everybody was getting on the same page about was, we have our piece, our ordinance piece can come out of the NYSERDA grant so that those monies can get used elsewhere in the grant task
Right.
for NYSERDA on the zoning
okay,
side.
There's 14.4 thousand
We're talking
that
about
was-
just for the ordinance piece, hang on.
for the ordinance piece, so the Hearst piece.
The Hearst piece,
Okay.
right. And of course, as Al points out, the Hearst estimate is now 2 years old. So we maybe need to think about shifting more to the Hearst side to make sure we have enough to finish that. So that piece coming out of NYSERDA so that those monies are available for the zoning side and they're not held for us, so they have those monies available. But we need to now say to SHPO, okay, if you're asking us to do a more radical rewrite of the standards than we anticipated, we need to make sure that we have enough money. So if you are asking us to do this, will you commit more funds to the larger project, A? And B, do we need to reserve, is there a possibility if we don't get enough money from SHPO to finish that project, to set a small portion of the NYSERDA piece aside to
As a
scoop up that,
contingency
as a
fund.
contingency to scoop that up later. But realistically, our ordinance piece is probably gonna get done first because
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Bill is mostly done with that. And that'll be easier. That'll probably be done long before the zoning
They
side
don't
is
even
done.
have a signed contract.
They don't have a signed contract yet. So the point is, pulling
Well,
us
neither of
out
have
on
signed- the CLG grant and the NYSERDA grant, neither of them are signed contracts.
yes, we do. We have a signed contract.
With NYSERDA, with SHPO?
We have a signed contract with
SHPO.
SHPO, but SHPO has stopped it.
Okay.
They've put a hold on it to say, wait, we need to restructure this. And so that's on hold. The contract is on hold, and the deadlines will shift. So the conference call with Jack Goldstein and Marie and Mike Armstrong was basically saying, don't hold up your monies for the ordinance, because we don't need your money for the ordinance. We've got enough money for the ordinance, but let us
They've
get
got way more than
documentation.
enough, they've got way more than enough money for the ordinance.
Right, so
Right.
let's make sure that on the other side, let's get confirmation from SHPO how much more might be available to us to finish the larger standards project.
Well, rather than, we have a $13,500 grant from SHPO, right?
Currently for standards.
Okay.
17.
Well, no. The
17.
standard side is 13.5,
Okay,
for the standards piece only.
I
the
know.
standards piece only, so, but if it's a $17,000 grant and 4,000 of that won't be needed because that goes over, that gets taken out of NYSERDA.
No,
No,
it is
no,
not
no.
getting taken out of NYSERDA. That's what I'm
It's
saying.
all-
The
it's all-
ordinance piece is coming out of the SHPO grant,
All total, there is 17,200,
17,500.
17,500 grant from SHPO.
Right,
And we have set aside, right now, there's 3,500 for Bill Hurst.
The
And
ordinance.
I think that in order to be fair to him, maybe we should probably bump that up to 4,500 because,
yeah, right,
you know.
because it's old.
Well, that and also the other thing which was sort of an issue is the seeker review, and you know the question becomes whether or not we don't know when NYSERDA, when the zoning part is going to get done and do all the seeker and so. One of of the things which we were thinking about is possibly just letting Bill Hurst do that and, you know, to cover that part of it, just to get it out of the way.
We'll have to do secret for an ordinance change.
Oh, obviously.
But we're probably gonna be ready before the
But-
zoning stuff's ready.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because
Oh,
they,
most definitely.
yeah, because they were talking about, you know, doing their secret stuff
A year,
in
second quarter 2016.
2016. Anyways, but that's still, you know, we need to talk to Steph.
All of this arose out of the concern on the part of a couple of members. I think Jack was unclear and Mike was unclear that did they need to, were there performance standards that had to be met by the zone update committee, deliverables that we were producing?
Right.
And the answer is no. We are responsible for our deliverables. That does the delivery of our deliverables do not hold up their progress.
Right.
And in fact, ours probably would be
Yeah,
first.
but right now in the schedule that they formulated, it did show that.
That's why it's getting pulled out.
Okay, fine, that's what I want to know.
Okay, so all of that confusion aside, and there's going to be Jack is working on a clarification memo, so we all have in writing, we all understand exactly how this is going to work.
Okay, so everybody's on the same page.
So everybody's on the same page.
Okay.
Your question about Garden Street, there is no folder, I realize, because there's no formal application or referral yet,
Alright, so no, so
and they haven't actually turned any paperwork in. They've brought models, and we've discussed the models, but they haven't submitted any of the paperwork, so there's nothing to look
So the
at.
last stuff I read is the most current, when they were shifting everything to the back, almost like a cross, right?
Well, now what they're looking at, we think, which they'll bring next Wednesday, is a parallel structure that's connected across the back.
Okay, alright. And can I just see that last one right there?
This one?
Yes.
I don't know what that is. Oh, that's Cena Cutzon. So I think that's everything we have.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Done. Ding, 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 ding.